Imagine, demand and build a world transformed.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It is very exciting to be here with all of you. We're going to get started now. Welcome to this session. It's Momentum Local, how to build power on your doorstep. My name is Gaia Sreeskanthan, and I have the pleasure of moderating tonight's session. I am the co-chair of Momentum National, and I'm really excited to be with all of you here and with the amazing activists on the ground from Momentum groups around the country. Now, before I introduce the speakers, I've got to get through all the boring stuff and make a few announcements. Firstly, well, this is not a boring thing. This is a great thing. To make the session more accessible, we're using a live transcription service called Otter. So any attendees who would like to use Otter tonight will have to follow a link and open the transcript in a separate window. The link will be shared in the chat box by a tech volunteer. And if you're having any difficulties, please message the tech volunteer on the chat. Secondly, as I'm sure all of you are aware, TWT is free for all, but it is only made possible by the contributions of our supporters. So if you are able to, please do consider supporting us at theworldtransformed.org. Support, we'll also stick that link in the chat for you, and that will help us sustain this kind of amazing work all year round. Lastly, a few principles for our space tonight. We want everyone to feel welcome in these spaces and for everyone's voices to be heard. So please bear in mind that when we're engaging with the chat, to not use inappropriate, rude or unkind language, and please don't spam. Participants who violate these principles may be prevented from further posting in the chat or the comment box. But if you do have a question or comment for one of our speakers, fire away, and we can include them in the Q&A during and at the end of the session. So, as many of you know, Momentum was part of the movement around the Corbyn leadership project, but now that the left is no longer in leadership, we have to rethink how to build power from the grassroots. The left should have always had its eyes trained on both electoral power and movement power, but sometimes less attention has been put onto the latter. Momentum's recent national coordinating group elections saw a consensus emerge around a vision of building Momentum as a truly member-led movement that could be part of a force for change from the ground up. Local organising and campaigning is a critical part of that vision, and in this session, we'll hear from Momentum groups around the country who'll share experiences of campaigning for socialist solutions in their communities and share practical ideas. We'll also be giving you an overview of the refounding process that we in Momentum are going to be rolling out in order to actually build this grassroots movement and help groups on the ground. So our speakers tonight will be Mish Raman from the Momentum NCG presenting on our refounding process. Next, we will have Alice Bennett and Michael Hardy from Liverpool Momentum talking about their project to adopt green villages. Charlie Balan will then speak from Cardiff Momentum about coalitions with Acorn. We'll then have Mark Lancaster from Tower Hamlets talking about the work that Momentum groups have been doing there with trade unions to campaign locally. Then we'll have Panita Goodfellow, who was the mayoral campaign coordinator for the North of Tyne mayoral campaign, which was a great success in the northeast of England. Then we'll have Isaac Kneebone from Bristol, and he'll give us an overview of putting on Bristol Transformed. Then we'll have Dawn Manners and Bindi Wood from Hackney Momentum, setting up workers' collectors for natural health, gardening and catering in London. So without further ado, I will pass you on to Mish Raman to present on the Momentum refounding process.
Thank you, Gaia. Hi, everybody. I'm Mish Raman. I was elected to Momentum's National Coordinating Group in July, and I'm currently standing for Labour's National Executive Committee as part of the Grassroots Voice slate. This evening, we're going to be hearing from Momentum groups and members across the country who are organising in their communities and workplaces to make change happen now. Momentum's new NCG are committed to building on this inspiring work and to reorientate Momentum towards the membership and to build socialism from the grassroots. Momentum must become the body through which members can meet each other and link up in order to be able to act at a national scale as well as locally. Decisions should be driven by members and taken democratically. We can achieve these victories for the left by being member-led and supporting our mass membership to become active, turning our members into organisers. This month sees the start of a nationwide refounding process for Momentum, and this will be a member-led process which has got to provide support and direction for established local groups, revitalise those who are becoming active, and establish groups in areas where they don't exist. We're going to build capacity, confidence, and expertise within local groups, establish strong working relationships between NCG reps and groups in their region. We're going to foster networking within regions and collaboration between neighbouring groups. And we're going to create channels and activities for groups and grassroots members to have a say in Momentum's governance, strategy, and political direction, which is going to culminate into a refounding conference next year. All groups understand the concerns and issues in their communities and the nature and internal politics of their constituency and local Labour parties. That's why they can interpret national campaigns to work most effectively in their neighbourhoods and develop their own local actions based on priorities and needs. They know the trade union branches, they know the campaign groups, mutual aid networks, and the community organisations that they can build power in collaboration with. Many local groups are already spaces that attract and cohere left activists. We want to support and strengthen this model and help roll it out nationally with a vibrant, confident Momentum group organising in every part of the country. Comrades, our aim for Momentum to become a movement building vehicle that turns its mass membership into a formidable grassroots organising force to help work towards a wholesale transformation of society, towards one run by and in the interests of working people, where resources are allocated on the basis of need and not profit. Our socialism has to be democratic, it's got to be internationalist, it has to be liberatory, and it's got to be environmentalist. At the end of the day, to create a society and maintain a sustained impact, all the things I have mentioned are imperative because we have to agitate, educate, and facilitate. We can't do everything for everyone because that will not create a sustainable model. We have to facilitate and create those spaces for our movement to flourish. That is, after all, what we are all about. We can't stand still and we cannot be bystanders. We can't refound just by simply tinkering with how we do things. We have to transform it by radically reaching out, especially to underrepresented groups, and by acting collectively to radically boost inclusion and reach justice. If we can achieve that better refounding, we stand a greatly improved chance of transforming our wider movement and transforming the lives of millions of working class people across the country. We have to look outwards. We've got to take this model eventually into the Labour Party, where we win back those communities who have lost trust in us, eventually making our party fit and proper for this day and age, as a force for good and a force for socialism, which is going to stand up and represent our communities, because that's where we need your help to make this vision a success together. And hopefully I too can play a part in that with you, the Labour Party National Executive Committee. So we're going to hear from our excellent comrades in Liverpool, in Cardiff, in Tower Hamlets, in Bristol and Hackney Momentum, as well as Momentum members organising in the northeast of England, who are going to test out the fantastic work they're doing. I myself have visited and witnessed some of these activities myself, and I've been blown away by the impact that they have made. There's a link to an Airtable document in the chat. Please, comrades, add your name, your area, and your info about where your local Momentum group is, if you have one, and please stay in touch and let's get involved. Let's build this movement together.
Thanks so much, Mish. So next up, we have Alice and Michael from Liverpool.
Thank you very much. I'm Alice Bennett from Garston and Halewood CLP and have been in Liverpool Momentum for 5 years. My passion two things: housing and the environment. And I've been thinking about how we can overhaul housing, because there is an absolute impending disaster with housing. I used to be a councillor, and I used to be the assistant cabinet member for housing. So I did a lot of work with social landlords as well. Social landlords, for me, have become affordable landlords by stealth, and there is no real social housing anymore. Liverpool Council, luckily, has had a contract now to produce its own council housing. So my plan with Liverpool Momentum is to really lobby the council to build proper environmental projects on our very sparse spaces in Liverpool. Now in Liverpool we do have green space that we can build on, but there is a lot of resistance to that, and that's very understandable. So if we have to produce new housing, we actually have to look at how we can build on those green spaces without any resistance from people. And the way we can do it is by building proper eco-villages. Can I go to image one? Thank you. This is a little plot of land in Liverpool, and I took that plot of land to the Director of Housing and a social housing development manager. Both of them looked at it very differently. So where I've circled in red is where I think there can be a pilot development. The social landlord said that's nowhere near what we would build on. We couldn't get a sound project from that with all the trees in the way. And the council director said, that's an interesting piece of land, but I'm not sure how we'd use it. So working with those two typical responses, I've produced a lot of images that I think can go on this type of development. If we can go to the second photo, I hope these are showing up for people. This is the type of housing. It's very sustainable, very low impact and very low cost. We have, like I said, an impending housing crisis. This is what we need to be lobbying our councils to think about housing, not in terms of bricks and mortar, but in terms of working within the landscape and on top of the landscape and around the landscape, and not removing the landscape. And that's what keeps happening, and developments are very unpopular, understandably. And if we can go to the next image, this is a complete overhaul of thinking about housing. Housing, when I talk, I always say, oh, we should be building tree houses, and I don't mean houses up trees, I mean housing within trees, because we're losing so much of our greenery, so much of our wildlife habitats. If we build off the ground, we can preserve all of our wildlife's food runs and, you know, all of their habitats. And we really need to be thinking about animal mental health in terms of housing development as well. It's not something that people put together. So if we can just go through the photos and also talk around them. I mean, I think A-frames are also the way forward. They're so flexible, so cheap, so quick to build. This is putting people back on the property ladder. We're moving down the ladder. We need to be moving up and bringing people with us. If we can stop there, just thinking about A-frames, you can build them on the contours of a landscape. You don't have to change the landscape, and they look beautiful. And poor people should have beautiful housing. It's my absolute belief. I feel so strongly about this. And the other problem is that we are having a housing crisis. If we go to the next slide, that's showing a prototype of homelessness pods and emergency living. In the next 2 weeks, we don't know how many people will be evicted. We haven't prepared for a housing crisis. The one that's coming could be catastrophic for our communities. We need to be looking at housing emergency in the simplest way, building the quickest homes. Look at these small homes, they are beautiful. There's no impact on the environment, and they are so pretty, and they have space. We need to be looking at this kind of model. Just carry on and I'll talk around them. Again, this is just chalets. It's just, we're so familiar with this. I know it looks like Butlins, but I'll stop there. But the housing crisis means we need to have affordability that's also environmental, that also means young people, older people, renters, buyers can go on the housing ladder. This is just an example of a stunning design. It's simply stunning, but also you can be stunningly simple. And wooden houses, tree houses, houses up trees, houses within trees, houses off the ground, for me, is the way forward to meet the housing crisis. If there are more photos, I don't know if there are. Again, it's just having like a pod design where you can be very flexible. This is an accessible cabin or tree house, whatever you want to call it, lodge. We have to also think about accessibility. This is, now I'm not promoting eBay because I don't agree with their lack of tax paying. However, just over £5,000 for a cabin in your garden, that is somebody's affordable first home. If only our councils would think differently. A house on wheels. This is all how we should be thinking about supporting our councils to think differently about the housing crisis that's coming. Something I just feel so strongly about, because it meets the environmental needs that we have to meet and also the housing crisis. So that's me done. Thank you. Thanks for the tech support.
Thank you, Alice. Is Michael going up next, or?
Yeah, is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
Right, so sticking with the eco theme, last summer, obviously, the climate catastrophe and the climate breakdown reached the pinnacle of public consciousness, really, and we started to be seeing the growth of the school strikers taking to the streets around Europe and around the world, and we saw the rise of Extinction Rebellion and whatnot. So people who weren't politically active were becoming really aware of the danger which we faced and how soon it was. So I thought we could really use that. We needed a platform, a position in events where people could come and talk not just about the impending dangers that we face with the climate catastrophe, but our ideas and the Green New Deal and all these different areas where we could promote these kind of ideas to rectify the issues that we're facing and create a just transition to a zero carbon future ultimately. So after being involved in the climate strikes and stewarding their events and whatnot, I decided that we should put on our own event, where at the time, but I needed more support with doing that. So at the time I turned to Ian Byrne, before he was the MP for Liverpool West Derby, and he was really encouraging and really helped and whatnot. And he has an organisation as well called Liverpool Left, which is essentially an organisation that brings together political events and whatnot, but mixes the political speakers up with music and entertainment from local bands that share our same ideologies on socialism and the vision going forward. So we sat down, and there was Ian and other people like Sarah and others, and we sat together and we created an idea that we'd have a young Liverpool Left event, which would focus on the climate catastrophe and the climate breakdown, and how we can address that. And we called the event 11 Years in Counting Climate a Class Issue. So in that, obviously, it talks about the 11 years, because it was 2019 as 11 years to the 2030 target. And we thought it was really important as well not to talk about the climate like it was detached from class issues, because they're so integrated that it's massively important. Addressing the climate emergency is a massive class thing, as well as it is impacting on many other areas as well. So we pulled that together. We thought it'd be a great idea to pull organisations from all different sides of things. So we held this event in a local independent business and an outside space, and we pulled together the trade union movement. We pulled together the Labour Party and Momentum and grassroots campaigns as well, and organisations that were rooted in the communities, and we got the school strikers along to speak. And we thought that would be a really attractive scene to get more young people to come along, those who weren't politically active and those who were members who haven't had that first step in. And it was a really, really positive event. And we got a massive amount. It was over 150 people attended the event, and it really got people talking. It got lots of activism going. It got lots of people more active in the grassroots campaigns, and it got lots of people more politically active in general. Some of the people who attended that event are now executive members in Liverpool Walton CLP, as well as being really active in Liverpool Momentum as well. So there's the kind of things that we need to be looking at. We need to be making sure that we're pulling other people, more people into the movement as well, not just being content with the people that we have got involved currently. We need to be able to be building and growing in the communities and involving different community and different organisations as well in the fights and linking up. And I know that these similar things being done in terms of the campaign that's being announced around the renters stuff, where they're working with other organisations. But I think that's definitely where local groups can really build, putting on these events to draw more people in, and instead of just having a regular meeting-based structure, having these different events that draw people in that can educate and help build. So yeah, I'll finish off there. I feel like I've took my slot, I think. Is that okay?
Thank you, Michael. That was really great and really inspiring how you're trying to sort of think beyond the usual activist meeting and really pull in all these different groups. So thanks for your work. Thanks to both of you. So I've got a question from Jacob. I think it was to Alice's presentation. How should we be pushing these kinds of models of housing in our community? Also, is this possible in our cities?
Yes, that's a really good question. Thank you, Jacob. I am meeting with the Mayor of Liverpool and the Cabinet Member for Housing about that plot of land, and I want to convince them to run a pilot project to see how we can build on a small plot of land what could be a pilot real 100% eco village. When people talk about eco villages, they might mean passive houses or rainwater, but I mean the whole thing. It's about the landscape as well, and I think if we can work with our local politicians, and I'm so glad that Joe Anderson has agreed to meet with me with an open ear, you know, that's a real bonus. If you can get through to your local politicians and get their support, that is the way forward. How else can we get to the authorities but via our elected members? And of course that's why we need more momentum members in the local authorities as well.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Alice. Thanks to both of you. Okay, so next up we have Charlie Ballan from Cardiff Momentum.
Hey there, I'm Charlie, as Jaya said, from Cardiff Momentum. Like all the groups here this evening, we've been involved in a number of different areas, but I'm just going to speak about one that stood out recently as being particularly worthwhile, and that is working alongside other grassroots activists to help set up an Acorn tenants union branch in Cardiff. So within the Cardiff branch, we often ask our members what priorities they have and what issues particularly stand out for them. And housing has consistently come up as something of great concern for many of our members. And we are quite lucky to have members in the branch who've been involved with tenants union in the past, such as Living Rent campaign in Scotland, as well as Acorn in Bristol. Now, like a political party, Momentum is interested in a wide range of issues, and so it can be a bit of a balancing act sometimes to decide when to run our own campaign, when to work in partnership with others, or when to simply support the efforts of other organisations who we know to be effective. So one such organisation who I rate quite highly is Acorn. For those of you who don't know, Acorn is a community union that deal largely with housing related issues, but they also campaign on a number of other local issues important to their members. They've been around for about 5 years. And during that time, they've gone from strength to strength with their direct action member-led approach. And they've been, you know, they struck fear into the heart of dodgy landlords across the UK. So really good organisation. I'm just going to quickly post a link to the organisation in the chat so you all know who I am talking about. Okay, that's in there. So that's Acorn, the union. So we know Acorn to be a highly effective organisation. And so for our Momentum branch, it made sense to support their work in defending tenants rather than try and reinvent the wheel in this instance. So how did we do this? Well, strangely, despite Cardiff being a capital city with huge amounts of people living in very dodgy private rented sector, Cardiff didn't until recently have any active local branch of a tenants union. So we therefore felt the best way to help those in bad housing situations would be for our members to help set up a new Acorn branch. So to do this, we got in touch with Acorn and ascertained what exactly the process would be for setting up a branch. Now, understandably, Acorn are stretched to capacity at the moment. And so we were told that in order to begin this process, we would need to demonstrate the appetite for getting a branch set up by getting 10 members signed up, from the off, and showing that we have a bulk of people who can take this forward. So we did this quite quickly. And we did it quite quickly because, we're a Momentum branch of like-minded people. So we reached out and said, look, we need to do this. We need 10 people initially just to get the conversation moving about, then building up and becoming an official branch. So Acorn then, after we had those 10 members, Acorn then began promoting themselves in Cardiff and decided, they were going to hold a public meeting because we had those active members. And from that point, we then needed to get another 10 further members. So we needed 20 members together who would help take the branch forward. So alongside Acorn's promotions, we as Momentum in Cardiff were in a really good position to help build interest in this new branch through our networks. And importantly, we were able to show Acorn how serious we were about getting up and running, and for them to make an exception for us to start a new branch, because at that time and currently, Acorn aren't really able to set up new branches because they are so under pressure at the moment because of everything going on. So once we've got the numbers, once we've demonstrated our commitment to getting this together, several Momentum members also went on to take up committee positions in the new Acorn branch and help run it, using skills that they'd picked up by working within other organisations, including Momentum, and being on the committee in Cardiff Momentum. So since the Cardiff Acorn branch has been set up, our members have played a highly active role in the organisation, helped it to achieve multiple successes in the space of just 3 months. The Cardiff Acorn has been the fastest growing Acorn branch. It successfully negotiated 3 cases in 3 months of being active. It's done 3 public actions so far, which has gained it multiple forms of press coverage. We've won our members already about £2,600, and we now have Welsh and parliamentary members asking to meet with us because they recognise us as a real serious organisation operating out of Cardiff at the moment. So if you want to see in more detail what the group has been up to, you check out the Acorn Cardiff Twitter feed. I'll just post that in here. 1 second. So yeah, the left can be a very disparate world. And so I think one of the best things about Momentum branches is that they're a great place to bring together committed activists who share a similar outlook on the world. Naturally, our members were keen to get behind Acorn's work because we share that similar outlook, and so we're well placed to support the effort. Momentum members are also motivated individuals often. We like to get things done, and often are seasoned campaigners of various skills, and so this can be a real useful resource to bring towards, new organisations or new branches of organisations. Now, I think it is worth noting that Cardiff Acorn is made up of a diverse range of people. It isn't just an offshoot of Cardiff Momentum. The Acorn group is made up of those across the Welsh left. So the branch includes members from Plaid Cymru, Undod, and others who have also been really active and useful and bringing their own skills into the mix. So at first I thought this might get a bit rocky. It's a different party political views, but it's been absolutely fine. It's been really interesting working with a broader base, and the Momentum members involved are purely focused on getting the housing issue sorted rather than playing some sort of party political game. So that said, clearly Cardiff Momentum has been useful in setting up this branch. We have a large network of members interested in social justice who we can easily reach out to and get involved. And so by being involved in an organisation that covers multiple issues, Momentum's membership is often well placed to help link up and support and work alongside different organisations. So a great example was last Saturday, different organisations recognised the need to work together. So we had Acorn, we had Momentum, we had XR, we had Black Lives Matter, and others marching across Cardiff together with different but shared concerns of making a more just world. So since the branch set up, the Momentum Cardiff group has still been keen to promote the work of Acorn in our emails and meetings. And it's been really nice to see new Acorn members getting involved who are Momentum members I haven't seen active since the general election. I think our Momentum members have been particularly useful on an ongoing basis in our Acorn branch, as well by bringing a level of political understanding needed to help navigate the Labour Council in Cardiff and a Labour government in Wales, neither particularly radical, And so our Momentum members in that context have been useful because we're all too familiar with the machination structure and individuals within the local Labour government. So next up for us is getting stuck in with Momentum's housing campaign, and we'll be working alongside Acorn in Cardiff and hopefully nationally to help build a social movement in that regard.
Thanks, Charlie. That was fantastic. And you know, you're like really so making the dream happen there with movements supporting each other. We have a couple of questions here. We've got one from Louise. Did you find that there was support outside of the already active Momentum Labour group? And I think you hinted at a couple of other groups that got involved there, but maybe you could expand on that. And another question, were renters in Cardiff familiar with the concept of a renters union when you first set up the branch?
Okay, so in terms of, Cardiff Momentum played a real crucial role in having that group of people ready, a sort of a cohesive group of people who are ready to pay up the membership, join together and take that forward in the beginning, but we were definitely not the only ones. And so in terms of the other groups around, there were definitely other people outside of Cardiff Momentum interested. And I think as soon as we got the ball rolling, and as soon as Acorn started putting the word out, and as soon as meetings started being called in Cardiff, you could tell that there was this real appetite for this, you know, and I think that's what it takes. Often we think that once we start something, we're going to have to do all the legwork. And I think Momentum plays a real key role in just getting that ball moving, because we're not the only ones. There are people out there who are really eager to get involved, and they just need to find the thing they're interested in. And for many people, they're not interested in the Labour Party. You know, they're interested in housing in particular. So it was really nice to get that set up, and then suddenly you had all these people, you know, some people with no experience at all in campaigning, getting involved with Acorn, and that was really nice to see. It was a real diverse bunch of people. So what was the second question?
It was about, were renters familiar with the concept of renters union when you first set it up?
Not particularly. I think in terms of the people getting involved, people have heard of Acorn, and people like myself and someone else were involved in Acorn in Bristol. And so it's this thing you hear about, but it makes a lot of sense. You know, when you explain it to someone, tenants getting together, fighting for their rights, and it shouldn't seem to be such a novel concept. And I think it is, to a lot of people, it is quite a novel thing. You think, well, a union, that's just for work. And of course, solidarity makes sense across all aspects of someone's life, not just work.
Great, well, thanks so much, Charlie. If you stick around for any further questions at the end. We now have Mark from Tower Hamlets to talk about coalition building with unions.
Am I unmuted?
You are. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mark from Tower Hamlets Momentum. I'm going to talk about 3 of our campaigns where we worked closely with unions against cuts. Firstly, a campaign between 2018 and 2019 against closure of council day nurseries. I'm afraid the nurseries were eventually closed, but the campaign was still something we're proud of, and it fed into other campaigns. Secondly, an ongoing campaign against the council's cuts to its provision for children with special educational needs and disabilities. Thirdly, another ongoing campaign against the council's imposition of new terms and conditions on council workers, what the council managers call tower rewards, which is what I'll call the campaign. This culminated through July and August in 1,000 unison members taking 9 days of strike action against new contracts that the local Labour Council had imposed in July, using powers to sack and then re-engage workers on inferior terms and conditions. Rather than going through the campaigns individually, I'll try to focus on some of the common themes that ran across those campaigns. Working directly with the unions, first of all. Secondly, supporting that work with work in the community. And thirdly, supporting that with work in the party. So firstly, working with unions. For these 3 campaigns, this meant working particularly closely with the local NEU branches and most of all with Tower Hamlets Unison branch. We've actively cultivated links with unions locally. I hold the Tulo role in Bethnal Green and Bow, and the Momentum comrade holds it in Poplar and Limehouse, the other of the 2 Tower Hamlets constituencies. I'd say these are very important roles to try to take at your next AGM if you don't already have them. But even without that, you can certainly build links with local union branches as a Momentum group. So we regularly invited speakers to our meetings. We kept in close contact with unions to ask for updates on what they were doing, ask what help we could give. And I would say that's key. We were led by the unions, especially in the Tower Rewards campaign. We focused first and foremost on building solidarity with what they were doing. And the simple and important message is just turn up. We turned up for rallies and meetings held by the unions. We let them know we were doing that. And eventually we turned up on the picket lines every day. We also built up solidarity with the unions. We publicised their meetings, we publicised their actions, we talked to people outside the local party, at our own union branches, in forums, in groups outside of the party. And finally, and I think this is key, we found ways to complement what the unions were doing, to do what unions are less able to do or can't do. And that's my second theme. And the key thing that unions can't do so well is working with the community. So cuts to council services obviously are an attack at the same time on workers and on service users. Our group managed to bring those fights together. Unions obviously are necessarily focused on workers. So Momentum groups, as kind of has been indicated, have a really crucial role to play in supporting that by working with the community, by working with, in this case, service users. In our case, that was parents, especially parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities. I'll shorten this to SEND, by the way, for the rest of this talk. So unions themselves can also be the way into linking up with service users. In the nurseries campaign, we met parents at a couple of meetings held by unions, and then we were able to kind of work with them, activate them outside of that into self-led collective action, with Momentum members part of the collective decision making. So we helped establish a group of parents, for example, Save Our Nurseries. It was not led by Momentum, it was not a Momentum group, but it was very actively supported by Momentum members and from within the group. So one example of an action by the Save Our Nurseries group was May 2018. It intervened in the opening of an exhibition on radical East End suffragettes. The Tower Hamlets Mayor, John Biggs, was speaking at the event, and the Save Our Nurseries group staged a protest as he was speaking, holding up banners, calling him out to save the nurseries. He responded, and honestly, you couldn't have scripted it better. He responded by apologising to the audience for what he called rude Labour women. The group told him they were parents. The audience unanimously turned against him. The irony, of course, which everyone except the mayor could see, was that the group's direct action was precisely in the spirit of the suffragettes, and that wasn't lost on Sylvia Pankhurst's great-granddaughter, who was a speaker at the meeting and became actively involved in supporting the campaign after that. More recently, and this is what the picture here is, Send Parents took a £12 million invoice to Downing Street. That's the money that was lacking from Tower Hamlets' Send budget. And this is really a good example of the way that Tower Hamlets Momentum had helped to bring together unions, service users, and the party. I'm not going to say a lot about this because there isn't time, but COVID has really been an obstacle here to community building. It's really destroyed in some ways the energy of the Send campaign, and I think we'll struggle to rebuild that now. I missed a session earlier on. I'm really disappointed about using remote means to build power in this time. This is something we're all going to have to really think Anyway, we also collected signatures for petitions in each campaign. For the nursery campaign, this included running stalls for parents outside supermarkets around Tower Hamlets for a couple of months, building community awareness of the campaigns, and through that putting pressure on councillors. The importance of councillors coming under community pressure can't really be overstated. It's important they're pressured by party members. It's even better if they're pressured by people that aren't party members, to be honest. In the Tower Rewards campaign, for example, we saw at a council general purposes committee that we attended in mid-2019 that a number of cabinet members who have been very unsympathetic to our approaches expressed serious reservations about the Tower Rewards package based entirely on what constituents had said to them at their surgeries. So it can't be stressed how important non-party voices are and the role that we can play in mobilising them. I want to talk briefly about working with other groups, because this was, as Charlie kind of talked about, this was really important for our campaign. I'm going to focus a bit on the SWP because there's a lot to say about that. It's controversial, but we got a lot out of our decision to work within some of the campaigns that they were leading. For example, many of us were involved in a COVID-related campaign group that they set up. Through that, we were able to make contact with local GPs, some of whom were SWP members. But later on, we were able to mobilise those GPs to sign a letter to the mayor asking him not to impose contracts on council workers during the height of lockdown. And that letter, I think, was really instrumental in getting the mayor to back down at the last minute from imposing new contracts on the 1st of April. They were imposed in July, by the way, but it was an important victory nevertheless. And that brings me to my third theme, which I'll try and go through quickly. Our work in and sometimes against the party. So our Momentum group is very much a base for organising actions through the party, raising issues in our branches, coordinating motions. Women's Forum is a really big part of our campaigning, leafleting, GC, all that kind of stuff. And we managed to bring the local party with us on the Send campaign and the Tower Rewards campaign, not the Nurseries campaign. By the time the strike was announced, for example, the Tower Rewards strike, both CLPs were fully in support of council workers, and that was really crucial. It can raise strategic difficulties. For example, in the Send campaign, we brought in councillors who were actively implementing the cuts, and that kind of focused attention perhaps too much on purely to the cuts that the government were making rather than on local issues. But we also managed to bring campaigners into the party. In the Send campaign, I think we're very proud of the fact that 4 mothers of children with special educational needs who we supported to become active campaigners, through that joined the party and brought their voices into the local branches. As I've said, councillors were key to these campaigns. In the 2017 local elections, we managed to get 6 Momentum group members elected as councillors. Unfortunately, 4 of those moved away from the group very quickly, which was a lesson to learn, and they haven't supported any of our campaigns. But our most solid Momentum councillor, Gabby Salva, who our name checked, worked incredibly hard to get 12 out of our 42 Labour councillors to sign an open letter to the mayor calling for the withdrawal of the Tower Rewards package. It's quite an achievement. She also used Momentum's councillor network to get 46 councillors from across London's 32 boroughs to write an open letter to Tower Hamlets Mayor John Biggs, and that really rattled him. It's also impossible not to talk about our amazing new local MP, Afsana Begum. She has been a solid and long-term member of our Momentum group. This is Afsana here. She stood with the unions and parents in the Nurseries campaign before she was an MP. She stood on picket lines in the Tower Rewards dispute when she was. Really crucially, she was able to bring pretty much every member of the socialist campaign, well, not quite, but a lot of members of the socialist campaign group to speak at the online rallies that Unison set up throughout August, which is really important in sort of showing our mayor that he was not representative of kind of what he liked to badge as mainstream party opinion. Most people won't have an MP like Apsana. We did also manage to recruit our other local MP, Rushnara Ali, to be pretty supportive of the Nurseries campaign and the Send campaign, up to a point, but further than we'd expected, I'd say. And as I say, we brought the party with us, and this really relates to another key issue, the narrative. And this obviously is always a crucial battleground in campaigns. It was critical in these 3 campaigns. In the Tower Rewards campaign, because as the name suggests, the council were insistent that this was a package of great benefit to workers, but also because the mayor continuously, as I said, portrayed himself as mainstream Labour, a proud trade unionist dealing with a rogue union branch in the grip of unreasonable people who didn't understand the proper role of a union, and supported by kind of weirdo left-wing Labour stragglers. And so the role we played in gathering condemnation from across the party, across the country, was really crucial in destroying that narrative. And I think that's it, really. The other thing I say is that all these campaigns really are, you know, they were long. Yeah, that's it.
That's really, really great. Thanks so much, Mark. We've got a couple of questions. One was kind of a broad one. What would you say is the secret of your success in community activism, from Jacob? And Louis C had another question about, you know, the difficulty of challenging Labour councils and whether you experienced any backlash doing that.
I mean, in terms of kind of success, I mean, I think I really think it's kind of it's important to say that the Send campaign and the Nurseries campaign, this shouldn't be the case, but it really was the case, were led by women in our Momentum group who linked up with some very angry parents of children with, particularly of children with special educational needs. Again, mostly women, and were able to support them to kind of find an outlet for that anger and find a kind of structure for it. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of repeating what I said, really. I mean, I think it's really a matter of kind of finding people where they're at, what they're angry about, and not trying to, as the SWP does, not trying to just kind of take that campaign over, but sometimes does, but you know, working with them and finding ways to kind of build them up. And I think our group did that quite successfully. In terms of have we had kickback from the local Labour Party? Absolutely. I mean, we've had the mayor kind of storming out of GC meetings, kind of saying that we're liars. We've had a lot of pushback, yeah, particularly around, I would say, particularly around the Nurseries closure campaign. And you know, maybe that brings up, I don't think we were, by the way, but I mean, there have been discussions about whether we were maybe too confrontational in that campaign rather than trying to bring people with us. But then, as I said, if you try to bring the party with you, that also causes strategic problems. But yeah, we've definitely had a lot of pushback, particularly from the mayor. I would say one thing: we've got a directly elected mayor in Tower Hamlets rather than leader of the council group, and that means the mayor kind of wields tremendous sort of power formally and through a sort of patronage structure, which makes it very difficult actually for councillors to speak out. So yeah.
Thanks so much, Mark. That was really great. So next up we have Panita from the northeast of England. and she's going to be talking about winning against the odds of the North of Tyne mayoral campaign. Thanks, Panita.
Thanks very much, Sonali. If I can have the first slide, please. I want to take you on a journey really in the next 5 to 7 minutes, which started at the beginning of 2018 and then ended in 2019, May 2019. And the reason why it's winning against the odds is that right at the beginning of 2018, a decision was made by government to say we should have a North of Tyne mayor. And only 3 authorities in the end decided that they would join this venture, and they were Newcastle, North Tyneside and Northumberland. So from urban to rural, and that's quite a large area. If you don't know the area, worth looking it up on the map. And it's winning against the odds because the first thing was that the candidate, the front runner, is a well-known leader of the council, Newcastle City Council, and really Jamie Driscoll, who won the election eventually, was an unknown, relatively new councillor. So the odds were stacked against Jamie really right from the start. He asked a number of people if they would like to stand, and most people said no. And actually that contest wouldn't have happened if we hadn't got open selection. So open selection is quite an important point at this juncture to make. And it was open selection which enabled Jamie to really win the nomination. That was because his offer with the team that started to back him from the beginning of around sort of summer of 2018 began to have a really focused campaign to reach a number of Labour Party members. And his offer mainly was that we want to keep our money in the region, and had a very clear vision of let's Preston model. You know, Preston's tried it out, we can do the same. So his vision and the fact that he was the candidate meant that we won the selection against all odds, because we did have a really powerful, well-known, candidate, the Labour candidate that had put himself forward. Once having won, that was obviously not enough. We then moved to the actual campaign. And the actual campaign, really, the overriding thing I would say is that this was a people-led campaign. It's the people who made the difference, really committed, hardworking people who absolutely made the difference. There were several candidates. The main candidate that we had as an opposition was a Conservative. But the key thing to remember here is that this election was regarded as a test as to whether people from who consider themselves a socialist, whether people would vote for a socialist candidate and socialist policies. Because remember, at the time there was a lot written about Jeremy Corbyn and socialist policies and left wing and momentum. And so Jamie was regarded as, and was labelled as, Jeremy Corbyn candidate, a Corbynista, a momentum candidate. And, you know, it was a real test as to whether people in the Northeast would vote for a candidate like that with the policies that he was presenting. And of course, the reason what Jamie and the team did was a very clear vision for prosperity you can be part of, a manifesto, which I've got on the slide here, which was very, very clear about climate emergency, building affordable, eco-friendly homes, community hubs, and delivering lifelong learning, and having a regional bank that would mean we would keep money in the region. And that manifesto, with a lot of thought about the detail of that manifesto, and also a lot of thought about how how Jamie would deliver being a mayor, knowing the role of the mayor. That's the work that he did. So we had an excellent candidate, excellent vision, excellent manifesto. Above all, we had a team that represented from Berwick to Haltwhistle to Hayden Bridge to Newcastle. Again, look it up on the map. That's a huge distance. One team working with Labour North, our regional Labour North, having very clear strand coordinators. They weren't just leaders, they were coordinators, and one task per person. That was the kind of backbone. If you go to the next slide, please. So very, very important to have a core team and a strategy, which I was the campaign coordinator working with Jamie and the core team. And right at the outset, we had an organization, an internal organization, activists coordination, one person, Rachel, who also managed phone banking, very, very strong focus on social media, and that was Jules, Tony, James with setting up a website, brilliant website that he set up, and Julian, very, very knowledgeable about climate emergency, but also connections across the Labour Party nationally and regionally. Leaflets, again, at a local level, having local leads, and Ian, who led on organisation of delivering huge number of leaflets, and conversations that were led locally by local leads, and they were relational conversations, not transactional. And then external, my job with working with Jamie was to make sure that he was visible, and that, you know, he was available, and that externally we had weekly 2 minutes policy video messages, one policy at a time, visibility, hustings, radio, TV, newspaper interviews, community-led sessions to test out policies. So the community organizer, Callum, who's vice chair at the moment of Momentum, actually organized sessions so we could get feedback. Door knocking sessions, as I said, they were relational and conversational rather than just give us your vote. It was really testing out policies. So the lessons that we learned from all of that was, it is a collective endeavor. It is thank you to the whole team. And therefore mentioning the people that I've mentioned really, and others, people like Catherine Smith who joined today and others who joined the call today, you know, are absolutely central to all of that. The reach, how are we going to reach all of these people? Our focus in the strategy was that we would absolutely focus on social media. We knew that door knocking on its own we wouldn't reach everybody in the northern region. So social media was our massive, and then phone banking, and then it was leaflets and letters. And we had an energized team that looked after each other, very positive and relentless messages every week, and they were positive. On social media, there was a lot of vitriol, but actually our messages were absolutely positive, and that really did the work. And we had internally, we had a very simple sign-off process. We didn't get into bureaucracy. People were empowered to make decisions and suggest ideas. And one final thing, Jamie's time was very, very tightly managed, very, very tightly managed. So he was where he needed to be at the right place at the right time, as well as reaching places like Halt Whistle. And there were members of the public there who had never got a candidate who'd knocked on their doors, and people came out on the streets to meet up with him. And that made the difference as well. So finally, what I would say is that all of that led to a comfortable win, a 10% margin win with a 32% turnout. And, you know, when PCCs, Police and Crime Commissioners, is about 15-20% turnout, obviously we want to increase that turnout, but that was a really good result. And the final thing I would say is that all of those people who were part of that team are still keeping in touch with each other. And we did have lots and lots of fun. When there was a huge amount of rain and we were knocking on doors, what we did was to go into a pub afterwards and actually bond and talk about our next challenge. And that obviously continues at the moment, and the work started in May for Jamie. I think I've overrun my time now, so I'll stop there. I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Panita, and also good to hear that you guys had fun on the road as well. Very important. We've got a question from Bindi about the level of support from border towns and the impact of loss of support for Labour in Scotland. How did that impact your campaign?
So I think that was one of the things that people were saying, that it was going, you know, that people were disaffected with Labour. I think what Jamie and the policy offer did was to say that this is a policy offer that is at a local level, that this is what's going to make a difference to your life. And I'm going nowhere. I live in the area. I'm an engineer. I've got 2 children, you know, partner who works in the NHS. People could relate with all of that. They could relate to the policies. And that's the one thing I would say. Very clear, simple messages rather than complicated messages. And people on the doorstep, oh yes, you know, I don't think I'd vote for Labour, but I'd vote for you, was the answer, because I'm going to vote for your policies. And so that, you know, so I think it didn't, the Scottish point didn't come through, because I think it was it was also Jamie being able to say, well, you know, I'm my own person, and I agree with Corbyn's policies, and I'm a socialist. He said, I'm a socialist, you know, I am a Momentum member, and I do support Jeremy Corbyn. So he was very open about that. However, he said, you know, I am my own person, and I haven't got any whips that are going to say to me, you can't do this or you can't do that. Of course, it's a cabinet-led, you know, it's a cabinet collective decision, and the mayor has fewer powers than other mayors. Nevertheless, people were persuaded by that. Actually, they were persuaded by the policies, really.
Thanks. We have another question about what have some of the achievements been with Jamie in office so far?
So I think, you know, he declared a climate emergency right at the beginning. You know, quite a lot of many jobs have been created during COVID-19. You know, millions of pounds allocated, making sure children have laptops and, you know, notebooks for schools. So he's made that happen. Of course, through working through councils at the same time as he's setting up a community hubs, and you know, the first stage of setting up a community, a regional bank has happened as well, and those are obviously happening in stages. And you know, the charter of being the good employer, making sure that the employer pledge that he's put forward is also in place. So there are a number of things that he has achieved. And what I would say is that if people go on his Facebook account and on the North of the Tyne Combined Authority, there is a video of the whole journey for the whole year. And you'll see some of the achievements that I haven't mentioned here, actually videoed and online as well.
Thanks, that's brilliant. And you know, I'm seeing so many messages from people just so inspired by both you and the other speakers, and wanting to know whether they can learn from you all. We're going to be posting some links in the chat, and it's a form. You can put in your details and make sure that we stay in contact with you, and we can organize more of these kinds of exchanges in the future, like more in-depth ones, because I feel like we just scratched the surface with all the stuff that you've been doing, Panita. So thanks for that. Okay, next up we've got Isaac from Bristol.
Hello, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself then. So I feel like I'm cheating, like being in Bristol. I'm originally from Cardiff, and the idea of setting up an Acorn there is like, it's completely blown my mind. So like, well done to everyone else. You know, organising in Bristol is cheating. It's a lot easier. So we decided to organise Bristol Transformed sort of a couple of years ago, you know, back when there was hope. And basically our idea with that was that we wanted to get a kind of balance between like an engagement with sort of serious ideas, as well as sort of presenting a case for this sort of enjoyable left-wing culture. I think that sort of building that kind of idea of culture is perhaps difficult in a left that is not as grounded in the working class as would be ideal. While at the same time wanting to bring in new people who weren't on the left already, and kind of make sure that every event that you go to is something that's both sort of enjoyable if you're new and understandable if you're new, and is sort of chaired in a way that means that if certain words are said that on the left we just throw out, neoliberalism is sort of an example, maybe one we've sort of spoken about, or even austerity. These are words that if you're on the left, you hear them all the time, but that actually they don't mean something to like everyone necessarily. So sort of making as well as making sure that the events were kind of enjoyable if you've, you know, been involved in the left for decades. Which basically meant that for us, the Saturday night party was always a key part of the festival, as well as the sort of beginner sessions that we had. Because I think like a big part of what we were trying to do was basically show that the left isn't just made up of kind of humorless nerds or, you know, scary tankies, which is sort of how we were being presented at the time. And we've sort of carried on this kind of approach over sort of a couple of years of sort of being in existence. It means we've had like an acid Corbynism boat party, which is using sort of the ideas of ACFM and Plan C and stuff, as well as sort of setting up a Bristol Union school. And we've always tried to sort of keep that balance at the heart of everything we do, that like people can get, you know, it's enjoyable to be involved in Bristol Transformed and come to our events. A sort of a key part for us was that we sort of wanted to get sort of connected with as many local groups as possible, not just the Labour Party. And getting them involved, it meant a number of different things. It meant sort of getting union branches to give us speakers and money. It meant getting them to actually invite their members using their email lists and trying to encourage them to have stalls, because maybe we'd have people there who weren't unionized, and having union stalls there was a sort of great opportunity for them. We always have Acorn, I'll give Acorn a shout out again, doing sort of activist training workshops, because I think they're one of the sort of most effective political projects in the UK. And this year we had National Food Service doing a sort of meal and explaining their ideas. That was sort of the last thing we did on a Sunday, just trying to sort of have a more accessible evening event than our drum and bass party. We also always try to have local MPs and the mayor, even though our MPs are not necessarily the most left-wing MPs in the country. You know, whether we'd have Thang and Debonair again, we'll see. But we wanted to make sure that there was, like, if you were just engaged in politics locally and sort of consider yourself on the left, that there was sort of some draw for you. And then when we got you there, we were like, oh, have you heard of communism? A big part of it for us is being sort of grounded in the trade union movement. Like, now more than ever, trade unions are the sort of our best hope, and they're also the best place to kind of find people who might go on to be activists. There's also people who are just members and don't necessarily get involved in as much as we want them to. Like unions, especially established unions, they have a lot of money that they can sort of use to fund these sorts of events. You just need to know the best way to ask, which is usually through sort of a couple of friendly members in their executive committees. We partnered with a number of unions. We have both years that we've done the festival, and this year we offered discount tickets to UCU members who were on strike. We were sort of trying to do an event around the UCU strike as it was going on, but kind of straight after an election, going straight into a festival in March. We just didn't quite have the time to do that, but in the future it's something we want to be able to do, which is kind of organise our events around ongoing strike action to kind of connect their struggle up to the wider movement. Hang on, I'll just get my... because I think that, like, as much as we need unions, they're a key point of struggle now that the left has sort of lost our grip on the Labour Party in the way that we would like. But unions aren't always the best. I say this as a union activist and employee. Unions aren't always the best at kind of selling themselves. They're not always the most exciting organisations to be part of. Sometimes they can be incredibly frustrating organisations to try and get involved in. So I think what the transformed events can do is kind of offer that kind of element of fun and that element of excitement and kind of grounding it in the wider struggle, which sometimes the unions fail to do. But we can kind of support them in that way, and we can work together in that way. This was why, like, the festival we did in March, which we had to, like, really, you know, after the election, we had to really be like, are we actually going to do a festival in March? And it was also the last week you could really do something guilt-free during the coronavirus. But it was definitely worth doing, and we made sure that we did it, and we made sure that it was bigger than the year before. Because I think what the sort of Transform festivals can do, so what TWT are doing now, is that we're saying that the left's not just going to go away. We're still here. We're still the people with all the ideas. We're still the people who, you know, we're still the coolest, even though we didn't win. And like we need to sort of build on that momentum, and we need to make sure that it's happening in places, not just in Bristol. Like, and you know, I know that a Cardiff Transformed is something that's been spoken about, and I'd be really excited to see one in Wales. I think sort of trying to, like, I'm sort of helping TWT as a regional leader in the Southwest, and it would be really cool to, like, see some of these things happening in smaller towns in the Southwest. Like, that would be really exciting. So one of the things that we're kind of looking at going forwards, we're still keen to do another festival next year, hopefully sort of in the summer, you know, corona dependent, all that sort of thing. But we're not going to stop. We're going to keep doing weekend festivals. But what we want to look at and sort of build upon is finding ways to take people from just being kind of attendees, kind of as passive consumers, and get them into being sort of dedicated activists. Like, our union school is sort of a part of that, and we're looking into sort of boring techie ways that I'm supposed to talk over people with privately, of like using customer relationship managers to see, like, are people coming? Are they members of unions? Do we know if they're getting involved in their unions? Is there anything we can do to sort of support that? And like making sure people are getting involved with, you know, tenants unions like Acorn again. And you know, we've been trying to do stuff during the lockdown that it's difficult, and I understand. Like, I've spoken to lots of people who've been trying to do events during the lockdown, and it's really hard to get motivated. Like, it's amazing there's so many people here. Like, Zoom events don't always have that same kind of feeling that when you go to an event and you have this connection with the community. But we're sort of continuing to do stuff. So the stuff we're doing now is that we've got an event this Saturday, actually, which is a mini festival in partnership with a cooperative organisation and stuff, which is about community wealth building. And then next week we've got an event on how to build power in trade unions and communities. It's about sort of keeping this thing going and showing people the path that they have going forward, now that because it can feel like, our path to victory has been locked off from us. But if what at the moment has taught us anything, it's that, like, the world is in complete flux, and like that flux is scary, and that flux is like difficult personally, but it does create opportunities for us. And it creates opportunities for us to build. Like Acorn that was mentioned, have had this massive influx of membership. I work for a trade union. We've got a massive influx of membership. Like, people are keen to start fighting back. And it's all about us sort of not feeling dissuaded and sort of helping them find the best way to sort of get involved.
Amazing, Isaac. And we've got just loads of like high five sort of comments and not that many questions, because everybody just wants to come to all your parties. I think that's like but really, really brilliant, and really, like, my point earlier, I wasn't kidding. Like, we have to have fun in this movement, and like, it has to be engaging, and we need to bring everybody along with us and have a good time. Otherwise, what's the point, quite frankly? So thank you for that really inspiring vision of what you're up to in Bristol. And we as Momentum will be supporting local groups to center and revitalize them, and maybe we could be using some of these ideas. So we'll be hitting you up for some trainings on how to throw a great event very soon, so don't you worry, Isaac. So thanks for that. And I just wanted to tell everybody again that there is a link in the chat that's being posted with an Airtable link, and if you can fill out your contact details there, we can keep in touch with you and keep you posted. And if you want to find out more information about some of these case studies, or for us to organize a skills sharing around some of these topics, get in touch with us through that. So our last speaker for the evening is Dawn and Bindi from Hackney Momentum, talking about workers' collectives.
Hello everybody, so I'm Dawn, and Bindi's coming on in a bit, and just want to, it's the passion and the determination that's echoing across this call and across this country is just so fab. So could we have our first picture slide thing, please? We just want to bring you up to speed with what's going on in Hackney, Momentum Hackney, aka Mohack. So just moving left to right, we have relationships with the local left in Labour and elsewhere. But it's just great to hear that we're going to get support with data to consolidate communication and actions. We so need that. The Canvass Your Ass Off party we ran, we had like 70, 100 people through the door that night, doing canvassing training during the lead up to the general election. It was like a high, actually, when 200 odd people from Hackney showed up at Chingford, at Thurrock, at Kensington, at Milton Keynes, Westminster. I mean, what a force. And actually, the worst night of everybody's world on December the 12th, we were dancing till 5 a.m. So I'm so glad that there's other social stuff going on out there. So what do you do with that force? One of the things that we think in Mohack is local constitution and group bank account. If you want to run a project, you need those in place. And we've done it. And we're really proud of that, actually. We'll get back to that in a minute. Our AGM in March, that with Pfizer Shaheen came, Dawn Butler dropped in, and us lot, we had 40, 50 odd people through the door in a local black-owned business. We're always like mixing with other groups there, so yeah, I'm glad to hear that's going on elsewhere. Anyways, the last thing over there, the 4 ideas. We want to do workers' co-ops, and that's what we're doing. So could we move to the next slide, please? Whoops.
We don't
No.
No.
Is this not the next slide,
I
Dawn?
emailed a slide. Sorry, Santi?
Is this not the next slide, Dawn?
There is not, no, there's another slide I emailed to you, this afternoon. And it is a landscape picture.
Give me 30 seconds.
Okay. It's a PDF, it's a landscape picture with 4 images on it.
Which is taken from our website. So at some point, if you choose to track down the Mohawk website, you'll recognise those images when you see it.
Yay! There we go. Thank you very much. Okay, so these 4 ideas for worker cooperatives are loosely based on, there's about a dozen, 20 people who are sometimes very active, sometimes a little bit active. And the ideas are based on their skills, experience, work they're already up to, or just their passions. And today we're going to present, Bindi's going to present breathing space, natural retreats for holy poor people. I'm going to talk about Hi Ho Gardeners Collective. We're going to leave Nuri Nosh and Digital Bastards for another time because it's just intense and brilliant and we can't pack it all in. So shall I hand over to you, Bindi, to just get into breathing space for a bit?
Yeah. Welcome to Breathing Space, a space to breathe, where we are aiming to provide affordable natural health retreats for poorly poor people. This is purely invitational. I'd like to invite you to close your eyes or to allow your gaze just to find a soft gaze in front of you. To really connect consciously with where your body is making a contact with your bed, your chair, your desk, where the earth is supporting you right now. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to breathe at your own pace. And while you do that, I'm going to invite you to consider these questions. What does a breathing space look and feel like to you? Where are you? Who else is there? What are you doing? And what features would you include in a communal breathing space? And I'd just like to imagine how amazing it will be when we've created this. So returning to your room, to this Zoom, bringing your attention and your awareness back to the here and now, we would invite you, if you want to feed back on that experience, we'd love to hear back from you. Anything that you want to be shared will be so valid. Dawn's putting the link in the chat box right now. I guess just to say that
Our short-term aim is really to consider, given that the health of the entire world's population is at the forefront of everybody's mind, how could we make this happen? A mid-term aim would be, well, it's to how to set this up. Where do we go from here? What are the next steps? And we are thrilled that we've got our constitution, that we've got people signed up to key roles, that we have our bank accounts. But yes, we'd love some input onto how we would set this up. We want it to be peer supported, self-managed, and a therapeutic collective across a whole range of disciplines. I mean, for me, this is a real passion project of mine, and I'm so grateful to have the support of Dawn, that we're working on this together, and to have this opportunity to present this to you tonight. So I'm now going to hand back to Dawn, and she's going to tell you about our next idea.
Thank you. Constitution. I'm going to read you 2 or 3 sentences, and that's it from me. So then it's really simple. The name of this group is Hi Ho, Gardeners Collective, and our purpose is to trial a gardeners collective in Hackney, which improves the quality of life for gardeners, residents and wildlife. The scope includes garden restoration and design. The way I earn a living is usually gardening, by the way. Garden restoration and design, garden maintenance, hard landscapers, allotment and smallholders, arborists, trendy word for tree surgeon these days, day labourers, fruit and veg growers, and herbalists. And really, what we want to do is we have some people, we need more people, we need a bit of seed funding to trial how to run that collective idea in Hackney. And, you know, I'll just round off with the aim. So there's lots of us here already working together. You know, we pass each other, you know, leads on customers and new people working in the field and whatever. We just need to formalise a structure, and we want to collectivise. So for decent pay, for health and safety, bringing young people on. And what about the Green New Deal? We just want to imagine there's a Green New Deal and just work it like that. So thanks for listening. That's what we're doing in Hackney.
Thanks so much. That's such a nice sort of like coming down session to end on. And I definitely want to take a nap in that breathing space right now. So thanks for putting that there. Thank you, everyone. I think we're going to have just a brief minute for any questions, any general questions and comments, or if people want to share ideas right now, or things that they're reflecting on based on all of these amazing presentations from across the country. I think people are just like really grateful for all of these ideas and your activism, all your hard work. And there's a lot of hard work that goes behind these kinds of achievements, a lot of sending emails, a lot of long nights of boring work, but then like lots of brilliant outputs. So it's really impressive stuff. So I think we're actually sort of 2 minutes to time now. So we might wind things up. Thank you, everyone. Please do sign up in the Airtable, keep in touch. We want to have more of these sessions going forwards. We're also going to be having monthly question and answer Zooms as the new Momentum MCG, and we're hoping we can spotlight different groups every month as well, so that we can, you know, get exchange being built into the way that we communicate with everyone. And as Mish mentioned, we're going straight into this refounding process, and we want everybody to be involved. So please do keep in touch, because we want to hear from everybody. So just before I go, just wanted to thank all the speakers and just make a few announcements. To continue the discussions, TWT has set up a space on the community forum. So if you've already set up your TWT account, you can click the link, which I'll put in, which somebody will put in the chat just now. to find the relevant discussion thread to this event and continue the conversation. Also remember, there are loads of events that are filling up really quickly, so be sure to register, including a few people pushing some very fun sounding party events in the chat, so look out for those. So make sure you've registered for the festival at worldtransformed.org register, and then go to the individual event you'd like to register for on the program. And finally, if you enjoyed this session and you'd like to help TWT sustain our work throughout the festival and beyond, please do consider throwing us a few quid at the worldtransformed.org support. Hopefully you'll get some links in the chat. So again, massive gratitude to all of you. Really looking forward to helping you in this work, building this movement together. Solidarity, everybody, and have a great evening.
View the full TWT20 program and become a supporter today to help us deliver political education all year round at theworldtransformed.org.